Good evening, and a very warm welcome to Tara Institute. I met some of you before, but for those who haven't met, my name is Ashvini, and I'm presenting Monday nights this month. So, the purpose of Monday nights is to introduce some ideas that are explored in greater detail in Buddhist philosophy and psychology. So, in our time together, we'll do some meditations. I'll make a presentation, and hopefully you'll have some time for discussions at the end. Anyone here for the first time? Oh, welcome. 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 I've left some feedback forms there. If you would like to leave any ideas, suggestions, or any questions or issues related to what our presentation or what we are discussing today, and hopefully I could address them next time. So this session is open to people of all beliefs or no beliefs, and the aim for these sessions is to be thought-provoking. Venerable Geshe Doga, our resident Lama, our teacher here, often emphasizes the importance of using our wisdom and intelligence when engaging in presentations such as this. So he once referenced Aryadeva, a Buddhist scholar from third century AD, who laid down 3 conditions for these teachings to be effective. The first was having an unbiased mind towards the teaching. And he clarified it by saying that, if you already have a favorable bias towards the teachings or the presenter, then you've probably decided that you're going to accept what you hear even before you have heard it. So this is certainly not going to have any meaningful impact on our minds in changing the way we think or act. The second point Aryadeva mentioned was of being interested in the topic. So if you are not interested in the topic, then there is no point attending the presentation or even presenting it. So the second point he mentioned was the interest. And third, most importantly, was wisdom, so that we are not gullible or we are not led astray, and we have to use our wisdom and intelligence in testing whatever is presented. So Aryadeva's advice in listening to teachings is to be unbiased, interested, and fully engaging our wisdom and intelligence to test things. So with this in mind, we can turn to our topic for this month, the 4 Noble Truths. The first teaching Shakyamuni Buddha gave after he attained enlightenment. So we've covered a bit of ground, but as a refresher, I will just recap where we are with this. So Buddha was not satisfied with what he saw as our ordinary existence. He saw that our lives are pervaded by dukkha, a certain unsatisfactoriness, or a state of ill-being. And Buddha did not accept that it had to be that way. He did not believe that to be a true state of our being. So he set on an extraordinary quest to find a state of perfect well-being, a state where we can have perfect happiness, be completely free from suffering, no matter what external conditions arose. And when he achieved this goal, and I've been reading this in all the 3 sessions till now, and I find it very inspiring, and I'll do it again. So he said, profound and peaceful, free from complexity, uncompounded luminosity, I have found a nectar-like dharma. Yet, if I were to teach it, no one would understand. So I shall remain silent here in the forest. We're fortunate that moved by great compassion, he did share his experience so that we could benefit from it. And it's his first teaching that we are discussing, the Four Noble Truths in this during this month. So the Four Noble Truths, the first was the truth of dukkha, the truth of unsatisfactoriness, or state of ill-being that we talked about. So Buddha perfectly understood our ordinary experience of life, and he saw that it entails suffering and dissatisfaction. Thankfully, Buddha did not stop at that, and he had a more optimistic message. And the second noble truth is the truth of origin of suffering. Where does this suffering come from? Because it comes because of its own causes, and that's what we're going to discuss today. And in the third noble truth, that's the truth of cessation of dukkha, Buddha demonstrated the ability to transcend the state of ill-being into a state of perfect well-being. And in the fourth noble truth, the truth of the path, Buddha laid down the causes that we need to create to attain cessation of suffering. So how can we go about this? That was the fourth noble truth, which is the truth of the path. So in this month we have so far discussed the first noble truth, the truth of suffering, the truth of dukkha. And Buddha understood this suffering as of being of three types. You could understand it as three types. One is called the dukkha, or the unsatisfactoriness of pain. Something that we can relate to very easily. This is the unpleasant experiences we generally recognize and try to avoid. It could be physical hardships, pain, sickness, aging, or it could be mental, sadness at separation from our loved ones, or anxiety of how others may think of us. So many mental disturbances. All these are in the nature of the first kind of dukkha. So what's important to note is that it's our experience of these events, and not the events themselves which Buddha described as dukkha. It's how we experience them. The second type of suffering was the unsatisfactoriness of change. Viparinama dukkha. We talked a lot about it last time, and we also did a meditation on this. So Buddha observed perversely that things that we identify as pleasurable, like having a nice meal, getting a massage, watching a good movie, talking to our friends, and so on, also somehow are in the nature of dukkha. There is some unsatisfactoriness about it. So how can that possibly be? So Buddha saw that no matter how pleasurable our experience is, it's bound to change. And when it changes, there is this sense of dissatisfaction. We used a few examples last time to go through this, that how a pleasurable stage does not last. Either our experience of that state changes, or things around the cause of pleasure changes. So it's never static. And we have this suffering during the pleasurable event, because at the gut level we know that it's going to end, or there is a bit of insecurity afterwards that when are we going to get the next pleasurable experience. So it's important to note that there is nothing wrong with enjoying the pleasure. We can enjoy it with a realistic view of its transient and impermanent nature, because it's coming and going all the time. In fact, when we stop clinging to it unrealistically, we seem to enjoy it even more. But what Buddha is pointing out is that we just don't have to keep jumping endlessly from one pleasure to another, with no lasting happiness. Buddha suggests that it is possible to develop and deepen an internal sense of happiness, which is which is different to these fleeting, pleasurable states. The third type of suffering that we could not talk about is called the all-pervasive suffering. It's a very difficult topic to understand or recognize unless you have a comprehension of how Buddhism describes how our mind works. And there's a lot of work on that, and without that understanding, it's very difficult to. But I'll just say something which probably will make sense. So sanskara dukkha is the all-pervasive suffering. Sanskara means put together, fabricated or constructed. So it's referring to a mechanism by which we perpetuate the earlier two kinds of sufferings: the dukkha of pain and the suffering of change. So Buddha saw that our ordinary experience, the apparatus of our ordinary experience, our body and mind, which is the basis for our experience, is faulty. And how it is faulty? It's because it is from a moment to moment prisoner to some mistaken beliefs that we hold or some past habituations. And these are the origins of suffering that we'll discuss later today. It'll probably be clearer then what this means. But because we are continuously under the influence of these mistaken beliefs and past habituations, we have no choice but to experience this kind of suffering. So if an ant bites me, I can't feel pleasure, that's how my body and mind is. I will feel pain. It can't be a pleasurable state. I'll suffer. And more than this, that when we continue to operate under these mistaken beliefs and past habituations, we create causes for future suffering. When I said sanskara, to put together, this is how we create future suffering. So there is no external source of suffering. It's through how our mind works. And we don't seem to have a choice. We can't really opt out of it unless we address the causes of suffering. Once we remove the causes of suffering, then we can say that we will not create more suffering for ourselves. So it's a topic which is difficult to understand, but and I appreciate that I haven't really been able to do justice to it. But I think I'll leave it at this, and because I want to talk about the origin of truth of the origin of suffering today, and we probably won't have enough time. So before we continue this presentation, we could do a short meditation together. So there are many meditation techniques that you must have come across, but in the Tibetan tradition there are two main categories. One is single-pointed concentration or stabilizing meditations, and the other is analytical meditations, or they're called the vipassana meditations. The single-pointed ones are called shamatha meditations. In the shamatha meditation, we just concentrate on one object, chosen object, and develop the power of concentration. In the other meditation, in the analytical meditation, is used for developing insight. We analyze an issue and try and develop an insight over that issue. Sometimes in a session we could use both together. And we're going to do a meditation like this later on in the session today, so I'll just briefly introduce this for those who might not have come across this, how this works. So the object of our meditation in an analytical meditation is the subject or the topic that we are trying to analyze. So the more concentrated we are, the better our experience of meditation would be. So you can think it in terms of it being like you are giving yourself an internal lecture. You're trying to explain yourself a point. Kind of a debate. We are taking both sides of the argument. Doubts arise, and their questions that need to be answered to complete our analysis. It helps to be clear about what we think and why we think it. So that's what we're trying to do with the analytical meditations. So sometimes we may have issues that we can't address. We can just put them aside and tackle them later. Sometimes in the meditation itself, you might develop an intuitive experience of the topic. You get a feeling. At that time, you stop the analysis and we single-pointedly focus on that feeling, that intuitive feeling, and try to hold it as long as we can. And when it fades, you can start the analysis again, or you can conclude the session at that time. So the combination of these two meditations is considered very important to achieve any true transformation of our mind. The analytical meditation helps us to intellectually understand the issue that we are trying to deal with, meditate on. And the stabilizing meditation helps us to make it a part of gradually make it a part of our lived experience. So once we hold on to that, then sometimes it can, you can just go into that straight away without analysis. It becomes a part of who we are. So let's begin this session with setting a motivation, and we'll do a single-pointed concentration meditation on the breath to start with, like we have been doing with it last time. So the purpose of this meditation is to settle our minds, and the two tools that we will use for this meditation are mindfulness and alertness. So mindfulness helps us to remember the object of meditation, and alertness watches out for distractions that might come. So find a comfortable posture. If you're sitting on a chair, it helps to keep both your feet firmly on the ground. And if you're in a cushion, you can sit cross-legged, hands gently resting in your lap, right hand on the left, and thumbs together, gently touching. It's important that you keep your spine straight, but not tense. You can keep your chin tucked in. Keep your eyes slightly open to let some light in. Or if you prefer, you can close your eyes. Now relax your body. Let go of all tension. Just do a scan of your body. See wherever you feel tension. Release it. Now, turn your attention to your thoughts and drop them one by one. Make a determination that for the next few moments you will devote yourself completely to the now, to the here and the present time. Let's begin with setting a motivation. Think about what brought you here today and what you would like to achieve from the time we are spending together. Whatever your specific reasons for being here tonight, we could all agree with that we are searching for ways to lead happier lives. Let's generate a sincere wish that the time we spend together becomes a cause for us to lead happier lives and be of benefit to others. Now bring your attention to your breath, which is the object of our meditation today. You can do this by focusing on the sensation of air as it passes your nostrils, or the movement of your abdomen with each in-breath and out-breath. Choose one, whichever works best for you. It's important that we follow our in-breath from the start to end. Our awareness is sustained and there is no interruption. What is recognizing our breath is our mind, and the object of our mindfulness is our in-breath and our out-breath. Thoughts will arise. This is natural. Recognize them as an interruption and gently bring your mind back to the breath. very gently relax your concentration and bring your mind back to the room. Think how wonderful it is to practice, to have the pleasure to practice like this, and make a sincere wish to find happiness for yourself and to become a cause for happiness for others. So, now turning to our topic for presentation tonight, it is the truth of the origin of suffering. So, let me start by saying that we should be happy that the dukkha, the ill beings, or suffering comes because of causes, and it does not happen causelessly, or it's not random or permanent, because then we would not have no hope of getting rid of it. So, this second noble truth looks at the causes of unhappiness and unsatisfactoriness that we often experience. So Buddha described this as three things. One, a term that we might have very familiar with, it's called karma. And how do we define karma? Karma is the mental urge which brings us to think, speak, or act. So acting out on these urges, we reinforce old habits, the old patterns. We'll come back to karma later, but just a definition to think about what karma is. The second thing he said is, the Sanskrit word for that is klesha, or afflictions, or disturbed states of mind. So, they are called afflictive states of mind because whenever they arise in our mind, they cause immediate disturbance. We lose self-control, we tend to exaggerate the situation, or we can often lose touch with the reality. So how do you know that we have an afflictive state of mind? It is said that whenever you are feeling uncomfortable, you can always trace the source to an afflictive state of mind. It is always present. Just a matter of finding out what it is. A good example is anger. Before it, our mind might have been calm or peaceful. It arises, then it disturbs. We might lose control, be in a fit of rage, or lose touch, with the reality. And luckily, it subsides, and then it goes away. So it's not permanent. It's not one with the nature of mind. So afflictions arise. They're like passing clouds, dark clouds, in a clear sky like mind. And ultimately, the third thing Buddha said was, the Sanskrit word for that is avidya, which is fundamental unawareness. So, in Buddhist terminology, it is a fundamental ignorance of reality. So, we could spend a lifetime studying even one of these topics, but I'll try and give you a brief introduction of all three today. I'm relying on a presentation made by Dr. Alexander Berzin, who found a unique way to explain this. And if you haven't really come across his work, Study Buddhism is a very good online resource. It's got everything together and much easy to follow. So let's start first with this unawareness, which is said to be the root of all problems. So unawareness, the translation is avidya in Sanskrit. Vid is to know, vidya is to know correctly, and avidya is to know something incorrectly. A misapprehension of reality. So Buddhism asserts that the uncontrollable recurring problems that we face in our life are because we misapprehend reality. It is said that Buddhism asserts that we are unaware of who we really are, who others really are, what is the true meaning of life, and what's really going on in the world. So we know all from our personal experience that all of us want happiness and we want to avoid suffering. But all our efforts seem to lead us to suffering and not to the lasting happiness we seek. This already suggests that perhaps we are operating in a framework of ignorance. One confusion which is said to be particularly harmful to us is the unawareness we have, specifically in the way I, me, or Ashvini exists. So this particular confusion is said to be at the core of all our problems. So I don't know whether some of you might be familiar with this concept, but I'll try and do it in a way that makes a little bit of sense. So how could we possibly be confused about our personal existence? We know who we are, This Ashvini, this me, I, came to this place before the session, and when the session is over, I, me, Ashvini, will go back home. Simple as that. So, but Buddha realized that we all ordinarily seem to have a misapprehension of our self-image. Our self-image, I, me or Ashvini, seems very static and solid to us, fixed. So what is this I? What is this me or Ashvini? Is it my body? We know that our body is changing continuously, all the time. I mean, we all age, don't we? Our cells are regenerating apparently 333 billion cells. 1% of our cells regenerate every day. I just did a little math. In the time that we spend here, 14 billion of our cells would have regenerated. In the next 2 or 3 months, before Christmas, let's say, about 30 trillion cells would have regenerated. That's equivalent of a complete new body. So, the body we had at the start of this session, the body that we have now, and the body that we will have at the end of the session is different, it's changing all the time. So, is it my mind? So, mind is also changing from moment to moment. Our thoughts, our feelings, our experience of life is also changing from moment to moment. My mind was completely different when I came here. It's different now, and it will be different when I leave. So again, it is changing all the time. So during the course of this session, my body would have changed. My mind would have changed. But me, Ashvini, who came here, the solid me, will go back home. So, sometimes the way I talk is, it kind of suggests that as if there is an external me or I who is controlling this body and this mind. There is something there which owns these two things and is the enjoyer of my ultimate experience. So, we can ask, what is this solid, unchanging sense of I? Which we are projecting on these ever-changing phenomena. Where can we find it? So I think it'll help if you can do a meditation together and try and see if you can find this I. Try and locate it. Try and work together. So I think settle into our meditation postures and bring your attention to your breath to relax and calm your mind. This is the analytical meditation that I talked about earlier. So motivate yourself strongly to do this meditation in order to finally become enlightened like a Buddha for the benefit of all sentient beings. Now, with the alertness of a spy, slowly and carefully become aware of the I. Who or what is it that thinks, feels, and meditates? How does this appear to you? Is your I a creation of your mind? Or is it something that exists concretely and independently in its own right? Now try to locate it. Where is this I? Is it in your head? In your eyes? In your hands? In your stomach? Carefully consider each part of your body, including the organs, blood vessels, nerves, Can you find your I? It might be very small or subtle. So consider the cells, the atoms, the subatomic particles. If you think that your eye is a part of the body, then what would happen if that part were removed in an operation or damaged in an accident? Perhaps you think your mind is the eye. The mind is constantly changing stream of thoughts, feelings, and other experiences, coming and going in rapid succession. It's never same from one moment to the next. Which of these experiences is the I? Is it a loving thought, an angry thought, a happy feeling, a sad feeling. If you think that your I is one of these experiences, then what happens to it when that kind of an experience is not present in your mind? If your I is love, for example, then when your mind is filled only with anger, does this I go somewhere else? Or disappear altogether, and there is no I at that time? Or maybe you have many I's, an angry one, a loving one, if you cannot find the I in your body or your mind, then could it be something else? Is there some extra part of you other than your body and mind, which could be the I? If so, what is it? Where is it found? What kind of phenomena is it? Examine every possibility that you can think of. Again, look at the way your I actually appears. How does it feel to you? After the search for I, do you notice any change? Do you still feel that there is a solid and real I as you felt before? Does it appear to exist independently, in and of itself? Do not make the mistake of thinking that my body is not the I, and my mind is not the I, therefore I don't exist. You do exist, but not in the way you instinctively feel, as something independent and inherent. Your self exists in dependence on your body and mind. And this combination is the basis to which our conceptual thinking ascribes the name I, or self, or Ashvini, or Peter. This is the you that's sitting and meditating and wondering, do I exist? Apart from this sense of I, that depends upon the ever-flowing, ever-changing streams of body and mind, is there an I that's solid, unchanging, and independent? The mere absence of such an inherently existing I is the ultimate reality of the way we exist. Let's conclude by dedicating sincerely any positive energy and insight that you may have gained to the enlightenment of all beings. Think that this meditation is just one step along the path to finally achieve direct insight on how things really exist. Now relax your concentration and you can. How did that feel? As go too quickly for you, or? Okay, so the Buddha taught that we understand the way we exist as an independent, unchanging, inherently existing self. So when we search for this self, we cannot find it. It does not exist. And even though it does not exist, we build and hold a self-image, some kind of a solid entity of me. We can, for example, grasp on to an identity of being a father. This is who I am. I'm a father. It's my, I'm responsible for the well-being of my children, and I should do everything in my power to protect them, and so on. Or we could have an identity of being a successful businessman. I'm a successful businessman. This is the way I am. I identify with all the traits of a good business manager, and that's who I think I am. Or I could identify, on being very good looking. This is who I am. I'm very handsome, or I'm an attractive man or woman. So we can build an identity, and sometimes we have a combination of all these different things happening at the same time. So when we are discussing about this confusion of how we really exist, you might be asking yourself, so what? How does it matter? It seems so abstract and academic that it's almost irrelevant to our day-to-day reality. It might be true, but how does it matter? Buddha's phenomenal insight was that this misunderstanding that we have is the avidya, misapprehension. And it is actually at the heart of all our suffering. And how? So once we build a self-image, when we create a self-image and identity, our constant focus in life becomes to protect or enhance it. So, all sort of disturbing emotions arise in our effort to make that me secure. There is some kind of an insecurity because, we have to prove and assert the identity that we have created for ourselves, the self-image that we have created for ourselves. So, using the examples that I mentioned earlier, if I feel that I'm the father of the family, it's not simply enough to feel like the father in the family. I must also assert that authority, because we have to prove to everyone that we are the father of the family. And if something or someone challenges that, we can get very defensive, or we can even get aggressive or very angry, because I have to prove who I am. This is the entity that I think I am. Similarly, if I identify myself, as a businessman, should my business be profitable, lean, efficient, well managed? So long as things are going well, I have this, sense, affliction of pride. And if things go wrong, then I the pride of being a successful business manager will be dented. Perhaps there will be a bit of shame associated with it. And if I identify with being good looking, and when I start noticing the wrinkles around my eyes, I might go and try to find a younger partner, or have a love affair, or whatever I can do to prove that this is who I am and how I exist. So, in these examples, these disturbing emotions, the afflictions that they arise because of this, are what Buddha called the second cause, kleshas, the afflictive states or disturbed states of mind. So, these states of mind as defined as a mind, when we develop it, it causes us to lose our peace of mind immediately. The moment the affliction arises, we are unsettled. So Buddhist psychology has a lot to talk about, these afflictive states of mind. But for the purpose of our discussion tonight, I'll just mention that there are, three types. One is attachment, clinging. So, we cling or hold on to things which will support our self-image. Once we have a self-image, anything that supports that, we cling to it. This is an attachment. And aversion, repulsion, it drives us to resist whatever challenges that self-image. And there are several other which are combination of these two, or they can be, because of one or the other. For example, jealousy, pride, and so on. They're defined as 6 root and 20 secondary root afflictions. A lot of work has been done on this, but we can just try and understand just how an affliction arises and disturbs us, and how it is the cause of suffering, our suffering. And this brings us to the third thing, which is, under the influence of these disturbing emotions, we go on without control or awareness. We engage in destructive patterns of behavior. That's karma, It's become very mainstream, possibly the most mainstream idea because of Buddhist and Hindu teachings on this. And we often talk about karma. And so what is karma? The simplest way to understand is that it's a mental urge that brings us to the direction of our experience. As I said, it is without control or without awareness. The compulsive behavior we have under the influence of when an afflicted state of mind arises. So where does this karma come from? It comes from our past habituations. It comes from, when we do something, we condition ourselves to repeat it over and over again. It's something that we can easily understand from the modern concept of neuroplasticity, or simple examples that if we exercise, if we get used to exercising, then or training ourselves, then it becomes much easier to exercise. If we use offensive language, it comes very readily to us. It is very easy to, or if we stew in anger, anger arises very easily. So it's just by our behavior that we create a habituation for this behavior to repeat, or our experience of that to repeat. And that's what Buddha explained as karma. So this is obviously not the full understanding of the karma, but it's a very key aspect that the mental urge that we indulge and cultivate, and it gets strengthened as we indulge it in it more and more. So I've given you a bit of a whirlwind tour of this very important concepts in Buddhism, which is the source of our suffering, which is karma, which is delusions, kleshas or afflictive states of mind, and ignorance. So I've barely touched at the surface of it, but I hope I've introduced these concepts so that you can, these ideas, so that you can come back to think about them. So let's step back and try and put all this together. How they collectively fit under this truth of origin of suffering. And I thought of an example, and I can share with you my own experience in presenting Monday nights this month. So, as you all know by now, I'm not a natural public speaker, but I have been attending to teachings for some time, and the subject is somewhat familiar. But the very thought of sitting here and presenting to you, creates afflictions, anxiety, self-doubt, and so on. So based on what Shakyamuni Buddha taught us, all the origin of my suffering comes back to my ignorance or my avidya, so which results in disturbing emotions and karma. So let's see how all this works together. So my suffering starts with my ignorance, as Buddha taught. So the ultimate cause of my suffering. So I create an image of myself, the avatar that we often create for our Instagram profile, airbrushed image of myself, who I would like to be, and this avatar is impeccable. It's a Yoda of knowledge and wisdom, and of course a flawless presenter. Of course, this is completely fabricated by my mind, but yet I could hold it as a real, independent, mental image of me. So, for this avatar, this completely self-constructed image, I'll build attachment towards things that enhance it. So, in case the presentation is good, it may lead to praise or acknowledgement. People may speak well of me, so you can see attachment coming into play. And of course, if I'll build aversion towards the opposite. If failure would be catastrophic to my my self-image or my avatar. It could ruin my reputation or expose my very, very limited knowledge. So there's aversion, the second of the principal afflictions. The avatar is fabricated, but the afflictions, the disturbed minds are real. So on the basis of really wanting to do well and not wanting to fail, under the influence of these attachment and aversion, these afflicted states of mind, I might engage in compulsive behavior, the karma. So I might engage in certain kind of mental thought patterns. There might be self-loathing, that I cannot be good enough, or anxiety. What if I completely freeze during my presentation? Or I may engage in speech compulsively. I might, in the disturbed state of mind, I may be snappy or impatient towards my loved ones, or vocalize my anxiety towards my co-workers. Or it could be compulsive physical actions too. I could, start stress eating compulsively, or I could take it to drinking or smoking, whatever. So all these urges that can come under these afflictions are my karma. They come from my past habituations. So as a result of all these three, my ignorance, my afflictions and my karma, I suffer. So the first kind of suffering, the suffering of pain, you can easily see, anxiety, mental suffering. Or it could be, if I don't sleep well, it could be physical suffering. I could feel fatigue. And you see, the suffering of pain can come because of this. And then suffering of change. So even if my presentation goes well, the feeling will not last. I'll forget about it in a day or a week. And then there will be dissatisfaction. So you can see suffering of change coming. Or I could grossly exaggerate the importance of my presentation. I could build up an expectation that can never be met. And finally, the all-pervasive sufferings, my best chance to explain it to you is this. So by engaging in this compulsive behavior, I would be continuing to create causes for future suffering. Because I'll be naively deepening and enhancing my self-image and these behavioral patterns. So that's all-pervasive suffering. So I will be creating causes for future suffering. So you can begin to see from one wrong idea, one mistaken idea of a curated self-image, my avatar, arise all these disturbed states of mind, all these compulsive mental and physical activity, and ultimately the suffering of pain, the suffering of change, and all-pervasive suffering. So the image is fabricated, but the dukkha, the suffering, is real. So His Holiness, in his book on the Four Noble Truths, he gave a lecture in London in 1996, which is a very good book if you're interested to read. He summarized it as, these afflictive emotions and thoughts which arise from our fundamental delusion, fundamental ignorance, give rise to volitional actions. So together, delusions and karmic actions are the origin of our suffering. So I'll leave it at that tonight. So, are there any questions?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Listening to the word you were saying, were you saying the avatar was not real?
Yeah, the constructed self-image, the image I built for myself, the avatar that I created for myself.
The avatar.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. Any other questions? Okay. So next week we will talk about the truth of cessation and truth of path. Hopefully all in one session. This is a very big topic, and I don't think I'm doing justice to it, but I just have trying to put all these concepts together so that you get some familiarity with them. So anyway, let's dedicate, do a dedication like we always do. So sit in a comfortable position. Think back to the initial motivation you set for yourself at the start of the session. Generate a strong wish that any beneficial outcome from the time you spent contemplating your presence here, anything you thought about, may it become a cause for you to achieve your motivation. May be of benefit to you and those around you. Thank you all for coming, and remember there are feedback forms out there if you want to leave any suggestions, and there is coffee and tea in the dining room, and I'll be around for a while if you have some questions to discuss. Otherwise, good night. I'll see you next week.